All right, y'all, welcome to the show. We have a big show for you guys today. Jam-packed show, if I dare say so myself, for this August, what was it, August 13th? Yeah, August 13th, 2026, high top. Once again, a Jacksonville, Florida, that may as well be a blast for us. Luckily, yesterday we got some storms earlier in the day around this time yesterday. That cool temperatures down, but not exactly so far today. There's no real clouds out there, hot as an oven out there. Even when I went for my run this morning, I was like brutally hot, as per usual on this time of year. But usually we get we get rain in the afternoon. Luckily we did yesterday, but I think the next few days not so much. Won't be as lucky. So oh well. Anyway, we are of course live here on YouTube. Episode what is it now? 202, I believe. So I still can't believe we're over 200 episodes. Like I mentioned, jam-packed show for you guys today, as per usual. Especially today, a lot of things to discuss. Fall camp intel, as per usual. A lot of teams have started fall camp. Scrimmages are going to be happening soon, so that's pretty cool. Not too long from now, and of course we'll have week 0 happening here. Pretty soon. I have that on good authority. Big 10 conference picks for 2026. We did the ACC a couple of days ago. Now we're doing the Big 10, so we're kind of moving along the food chain here. Next week, obviously, will be the Big 12 and the SEC. So we'll be doing those two conferences next week. Got some thoughts on this whole little thing that happened yesterday with Florida State, and quote from CBS Sports that I'll play here in a minute. Clip that's been circulating around the socials yesterday about Mike Norvell. Touch on that briefly. And unfortunately, we have to talk about some news regarding a former LSU quarterback. You may know him by the name of Jayden Daniels, or Jayden. That's a different Jayden Daniels. He's with the Buccaneers actually as a practice squad quarterback. But we're talking about Jayden Daniels, of course. The whole controversy going on with him. I have some thoughts on that. Some tough thoughts, but there are definitely some thoughts. I will save that for the end of the show. Because it's technically a lot of dealing with college football, but kind of is dealing with college football now because it's a college football related topic. But anyway, we'll touch on that towards the end of the show. That's definitely going to be one that you might want to get your popcorn ready, if you will. Reference to Lane Kiffin. But as I said, jam-packed show today. If you are new here to this show, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're at 17 subscribers right now. We can at least get over 30, I think, in between now and let's just say end of September, maybe. So let's do that. Hopefully we can do that. Be sure to, if you have any friends that love college football or are big college football fans, tell them to subscribe to the channel. Just come over here. We talk about college football all year round, 247. Not always 365, but 300 days, if you will, unless barring any other reasons why we can't broadcast and whatnot. But yeah, if you have a college football fan, if you're a fan yourself and you're new here to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Even if you're a returning viewer, make sure you subscribe. Just double check. Make sure you are. You don't have to turn on notifications. I don't do that personally, but you can if you want. And also, in addition to our YouTube channel, we have the podcast feed, which is where you can get the full extra pods, which we are doing one tomorrow. Can get it done yesterday. We haven't done it, but I will make sure we'll do it tomorrow morning. As soon as I get back from my run tomorrow, I'll make sure we will get that recorded and whatnot, because we haven't done one in a while, so we think it's about time to do one. It was time to do one this week, so I just couldn't get to it yesterday, but I will get to it tomorrow. So that should be on the docket for tomorrow, hopefully. But yes, podcast feed. That's where the audio version only of the show is, and that's where you can find the full Four Verticals Extra Pod, which is over there. And of course, you put the individual clips on the YouTube, but not the full show. So there is that. And you also follow us on Twitter, X, and on Instagram. Those links should be in the channel description for you guys if you are new here. So hopefully that settles everything for the boilerplate stuff. Let's go ahead and jump right in skis, okay? Fall camp intel. Again, all fall camps opening all across the country, whether it's the East Coast, West Coast, North, South, East, West, even all as far west as Hawaii. They're all, getting ready for the season to start. For some earlier than others, right? We have week 0 coming up here in about less than 2 weeks now, which is pretty cool. I believe the first game of the year is Texas Christian. Yeah, Texas Christian and North Carolina. Good old Bill Belichick going overseas to play against St. Hikes and TCU. But of course, we'll get to that eventually once that game gets closer, and we'll do the breakdown. And, well, spoiler here, not much of a breakdown probably, but anyway. Fall camp intel, right? So we have, let's see, who we have not talked about yet. Auburn. We haven't talked about them yet. We haven't talked about Auburn or talked about Auburn in probably since our record projection video, or not video, but segment on them. So, of course, they started fall camp. New head coach, Alex Golesh there. Brand new offensive system. You keep the defensive system there, but you're losing a lot of talent. But either through the transfer portal, we'll talk about one such player here in a moment, or in a little bit. And then, of course, folks going into the NFL draft. But wide receiver, definitely one of the bigger storylines coming out of camp. Still trying to figure out the pecking order for Auburn. That's kind of been the consistent theme, whether it's from the 247 guys or the on-3 guys or independent journalists. That's sort of been the underlying issue here, that they have players there. Either the remaining folks from the roster last year, again, their entire wide receiver room was basically gutted except for, I believe, was it Bryce Ken, I believe, is still there. So they still have him, but it's mainly largely a new wide receiver core outside of him. So that's kind of been the issue, that they're just trying to figure out who's really going to be the number one featured guy, which is a bit of a concern that, you're still trying to figure it out all the way into fall camp. But there has been at least one play that has stood up, at least from the media's perspective, right? Everyone who has been covering Auburn has at least brought up the name of Keyshawn Singleton, not Eric Singleton. It's a different Singleton. There's kind of confusing here. There was a Singleton last year for Auburn. Now there's another one. They're not related. They're just a similar last name. He comes from South Florida with Alex. He has definitely stood out. That's, again, according to a lot of folks who have seen, in the public viewings and whatnot. That's someone who has stood out. So his name is definitely worth watching, as, again, they are still trying to sort out the rotation. So, yeah, it's a little concerning they haven't necessarily have a finalized rotation, but, I mean, it does also kind of sound like they're getting close to that. So we'll see. Now, the biggest other development, there's really three here, is that the defense has gotten a whole lot of attention, particularly the competition and physicality across the defensive line and secondary. At least that's kind of been the generalization that you've gotten from, again, a lot of these Auburn reporters. Though I will say, I still don't know if I think the defense will be as good as it was at times last year. Remember, there was a graphic going around that, what was it, Auburn and Indiana, Miami were like the three only teams in the country that hadn't, at least up to that point, allowed more than 30 points in the game yet, which was mind-blowing. And that's something that I think a lot of folks have forgotten. But again, the problem is you've had a lot of those players that were on Auburn's defense last year in particular. They're not there anymore, whether it's, again, transfer portal or just off to the NFL. So suffice it to say, I'm not quite sure if the defense will be of the same caliber as last year, but I don't think it's going to get much worse than what you got, I don't know, like in certain years of like the Malzahn era or, even the Brian Harsin era. So I don't think it's going to be like historically bad or anything like that, like how it was in, probably 2012 probably, or anything like that, any of like the worst years for Auburn football, at least since the year 2000. But what I'm trying to say is I'm not totally expecting a defensive unit that's going to be at the same caliber as last year, or even the prime years with guys like Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown and those type of guys. And then you have the 2 years under Will Muschamp back in the early or the late 2000s and 2015. I'm not expecting that type of caliber of defense. I do believe that you're going to see some stability, but I do believe that they're probably going to give up more points more often than not. At least in just my opinion, but I could be wrong on that. Apparently, there was also a bit of a surprise that's been noted around a couple of the Auburn media sphere about just the way the practice is being handled. It's a little bit different approach, right? You've seen a lot of folks, who was it, the AL.com writer that always gets shit on from a lot of folks, especially within the Auburn program, which to a certain extent, I can sympathize with that a little bit, because some of the stuff they've written in the past, again, regarding AL.com, and one writer who should not be named out of, somewhat dignity. But, one of the writers there typically viewed as anti-Auburn and kind of complaining about, the style of Alex Golesh isn't typical of an SEC head coach. Well, I hate to break it to you. Coaches aren't robots. Coaches can do, at least to a certain extent, barring any serious injury or malpractice, can basically do most of what they want in terms of how they want their practices structured and how they want their fall camps to be structured, right? And sure, there's probably an underlying rule in how, most coaches prefer, at least a generalized structure, but the finer details and the way to do things, it's not the same. It's very, very unique, very single coach. So for a reporter to call out, oh, Auburn, having their players staying in a hotel versus staying on campus, who the fuck gives a shit, right? Like, I don't understand how is that newsworthy? Like, there's more, like, are you running out of things to talk about? So, of course, obviously for Auburn, the other big news is, of course, Byron Brown, and everyone, of course, is still freaking out over, what happened in the spring, and his throwing motion is very weird. It's, as people say, it's the sidearm crap. I don't care about that per se. Does he have a future in the NFL? Well, obviously, no, he probably doesn't. At least I don't think he does, right? You can say the same thing about someone like Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss, right? Probably no future in the NFL, but as long as they can run a college offense, do it efficiently, I don't think anyone really gives a shit about how they throw the football. It can be the most awkward throwing motion ever, but if they can get the job done and win you games and come up huge in the big moments, despite the fact again their mechanics are kind of dumb and probably don't translate well to the NFL. I don't think anyone's really going to give a crap. So I don't care about that. I don't really see that as being an important issue, but I guess for some people it is an important issue, but that's their problem, not a me problem. Anyway, let's go outside the SEC for a minute. Go up to Maryland, University of Maryland, the Maryland Terrapins, the alma mater, by the way, of Muppets critter Jim Henson. For those of you who don't know, there's a statue on campus. I'm claiming I've been there before. I've not been there before, but there's images and stuff out there. And also, didn't they have Kermit the Frog do the commencement speech or something last year? I know a lot of folks gave the school a lot of crap for that, but I don't know. It's kind of cool. It's unique. Sure, you could have gotten, I don't know, like Scott Van Pelt or Stephon Diggs doing it, but why not bring in a puppet, right? Who doesn't hate puppets? Anyway, so speaking of Maryland football, more of a serious news here. So yesterday it was revealed, or not revealed, but reported that star defensive end, I think it's Zahir Mathis. That's how you say it. I'm not the best at some of these names that are out there in college football. Probably should have done the Google Translate to pronounce the name, but I didn't have time for that. Anyway, Mathis, he's the defensive line. He's been there. I think he was there last year. He was a freshman All-American. Sorry, there's dust in my nose because we have fans going on because it's getting so fucking hot. Anyway, so yeah, Mathis, he was there last year as a freshman All-American. He is done for the year. Michael Oxley confirmed it yesterday. So that's a big blow for Maryland, a team that's already, at least historically, is not typical, or at least doesn't typically do very well. And of course, most of that's because they were in the Big Ten East for a long time. And even now without divisions, they're still struggling. Part of it is just they're not really good at acquiring talent. If anything, talent leaves their state, and they're usually ones who are having to fight for the leftovers and stuff. So he is out. So that means that they're going to have to rely on younger players to fulfill that position. That doesn't mean they lack talent on that side of the football. Strangely, they have like another high level, I think, defensive lineman as well. That's going to have to be playing a little bit more probably than they expected. So that's a bit of a concern there. But like I said, Maryland, they're not typically a team that really truly does very well in the Big Ten. And again, part of it is when they expanded, the Big Ten did back in 2014. They brought in Maryland because, hey, send the TV boxes, right? Got to make sure you get the viewership numbers up and whatnot. And obviously, it's not relevant now because of YouTube TV and all these other streaming, websites and whatnot. Even like regular YouTube, for some reason, there's a lot of live college football games on there, which is kind of surprising how ESPN doesn't take those down quicker than they usually do. But anyway, yeah, not good for Maryland. That's obviously pretty bad. Again, on a team that I think a lot of folks are worried about. Granted, I think their quarterback, who was it, Malik Washington or something like that, pretty good quarterback, good dual threat guy. So I think he's like always available, by the way, too, in like the transfer portal in the college football video game, which is kind of weird. Like he's like, what is like him and some other guys are always pretty common to find after your first season. But anyway, bad news from Maryland. Speaking of bad, or actually, well, not speaking of, I don't know why I just said that. Anyway, so yeah, let's go leave the Big Ten. We'll virtual back down to the SEC. Two teams we haven't talked about yet that much. Florida, right? We talked about Florida State last week. Let's talk about Florida. So, to my surprise, there's still not been, at least from what I can tell, a final decision on who the starting quarterback is going to be for Florida. You have Aaron Philo, the transfer from Georgia Tech. He's, obviously very, really familiar with the offense because, Buster Faulkner was there last year. So you have Aaron Philo, you have Tramell Jones, the freshman, who's also, more or less a dual threat quarterback. Unlike Aaron Philo. So it's a bit of a different vibes you're going to get here. You have Philo, who I guess he can run, but, that's not his, actual skill set per se. He's not like a pure runner, probably more of like a, field general quarterback, probably, if I had to guess. Then you also have, again, Tramell Jones, who is, again, dual threat guy, can run around and stuff. So that's wide open, which is weird because you would imagine that Aaron Philo, given, again, his relationship with Buster Faulkner going back to his time at Georgia Tech, you would assume that Aaron Philo would win this job. Now, again, that was folks who were assuming that when he transferred over from Georgia Tech and they brought the offensive coordinator and whatnot, once Summerall got hired. So there is a bit of a surprise that they have not narrowed it down yet. Now, I still firmly believe it will be Philo's job, but that doesn't mean you won't see Tramell Jones on like a Wildcat package, or not a Wildcat, I guess, like a goal line QB power situation or short yardage thing. So that is definitely possible. So, again, both of these guys have their strengths and their weaknesses. So definitely something to consider. And another thing to consider as well is that, of course, last year with Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, they had Haynes King, who's more of a running quarterback off. So again, Aaron Philo is not that. Tramell Jones is probably closer to that. So again, it's kind of a weird thing here where you have the experienced guy and, quarterback who is used to the offense. And, it's kind of at least you would assume it's a plug and play and he knows the offense and all things are well. But then again, the appeal and the higher ceiling, if you will, of Tramell Jones and his ability, I can understand from that degree why there is a bit of a, we could go this way, but we really maybe want to go this way. But again, it just seems it's just shocking to me that the quarterback who, again, knows Buster's offense is not taking that job with a stranglehold, which is was a bit interesting to me. It's not a bad thing. And, I know a lot of folks kind of get that way when people whether it's reporters or one of the national types like, Josh Pater, Bud Elliott, when they bring up the fact that, this guy's not taking a job yet. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just it's interesting. It makes your eyes kind of, percolate a little bit when that happens. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it's just something to observe. And it is interesting, right? It's kind of interesting how these things kind of, how these quarterback battles really are kind of like parasites. They kind of move on their own and they kind of take a life of their own a little bit. Probably a weird analogy, but anyway, wide receiver room, Dallas Wilson, going to be your star wide receiver for sure. Wide receiver number one, so not surprising there. Defensive line, D-line, Elgin McCray, of course, he's one of, again, a number of talent that's still at UF. He's been very impressive, along with adding a lot more, physicality to the defensive line too. Another standout that's been happening, or that's been occurring, is what's his name? His last name's Kent. He's the tight end. Is it Hazy Kent or Heisey Kent? Again, apologies again. I probably should have just done the Google Translate and find a way to pronounce these names correctly. But the tight end there, Kent, he's a freshman, I believe, from Brunswick, Georgia, I believe, which is like that direction here, north of Jacksonville. It's in the Jacksonville TV market too, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah, he's from Brunswick, Georgia. He's a freshman. That's interesting. So that's pretty cool that they're getting it again, another pass catcher in addition with Dallas Wilson to be there for whoever's made a starter at quarterback. So that's pretty cool that it's happening. But I think the biggest thing for Florida is, yes, again, with Billy Napier, again, I hate to harp on this again, but the issues with Billy Napier wasn't necessarily the behind-the-scenes stuff, like the nutrition stuff, the behind-the-scenes things that you don't typically think of when you're thinking of college football, like in nutrition, strength and conditioning, recruiting, things like that. That wasn't the issue with Billy Napier. The issue was, and it was a very much like a consistent issue. Was really two issues. Of course, one was the offense. Billy Napier claimed to be a offensive savant, but obviously it ended up not being true, and other folks ended up backing that up, particularly coaches who faced him in the Sun Belt. And then there's also the idea of the procedural stuff, the penalties, false starts, too many guys on the field, taking timeouts randomly, end-game decision-making. Like, for example, last year in the game against South Florida, like not going for it on obvious fourth-down situations late in the game, in particular where, it's kind of where you need to start making those critical decisions and whatnot. Just stupid stuff like that. So, again, the behind-the-scenes stuff of Billy Napier, that was not the issue. The issue was the on-the-field stuff. So, just to kind of put things in perspective here, where we're hearing about all this good stuff about Florida and fall camp, that shouldn't surprise you because the system last year, where in the years before, wasn't freaking broken. It was the stuff on the field. So we'll see. Now, granted, their runway here for Florida, it's very easy to get. You get Florida Atlantic, then they get to the FCS team coming in, then they go to Auburn. Ironically, who we just mentioned at the top of the segment here. So we'll see if any of those issues are fixed, but I'm assuming they will be fixed. That's just an assumption. It's not a guarantee. And then finally here, Texas, speaking of Auburn, like I mentioned earlier, one of their former receivers, one of the talented guys who left. Again, grant you, yes, folks will say this individual, yes, while he was there and he is talented, you got all of the accolades off high school. Did he really contribute? I'm speaking about Cam Coleman. At this point, who really gives a shit now? It's over with. He's not there anymore. He's still extremely talented. Yes, you can make the argument, well, I don't know. He was so talented. Why did the team go 5-7? I don't know. You tell me the fucking head coach was a dumbass and Hugh Freeze, okay? Like, it's not just, the guy was an idiot. Sure, he may have been a clown off the field, and same thing with a lot of other guys, too. Duh, every single team has that. A lot of different personalities. LSU, ditto. Florida State, 2013. Indiana probably had some clowns too on that team, but did you hear any about that stuff? No, you didn't hear that stuff about them because they were winning all the games and whatnot. But anyway, Cam Coleman definitely going to be a monster, right? The one-handed catches he's been making and whatnot in practice. I know a lot of folks have been making a big deal about the whole, he's throwing the football. Look, it's Arch Manning. It's a noodle football. Okay, like that's just a clip out of context. It's just a cool highlight reel. Like, I can guarantee you that's not consistently happening at Texas practices. Okay, even though I'm not been there, but I can almost basically guarantee you that that's not happening. So for Texas there, Cam Coleman obviously is going to be a monster. Probably won't hear much of him in week 1, but I think you'll probably see a lot of him week 2. And what's that team from the north? Starts with an O and ends with an E. Ohio State, I think. Head coach Dave Ryan or something like that. I'm just being sarcastic here, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Week 2, potential game of the century type stuff there happening. So, fall camp intel almost took 30 minutes of that, but this is going to be a long show. I probably should have said that at the beginning. That's probably going to be a long duration show because, again, we are getting into the season. Things are happening very quickly, as can be. I'm going to get some water real quick, and then we'll move on to this little segment that I didn't think I was going to be talking about today, but there's only 2. There was this one, and there was the one I mentioned earlier with Jayden Daniels that I fully did not expect about talking about. But unfortunately, I have to talk about both of these. But this one's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing that got brought up yesterday, and folks were talking about it. A lot of the esteemed Florida State brass were talking about it. So I'll chime in on it. I'll wade into these waters. I'll put my hand in the cookie jar and talk about it. We'll play the clip. Hope I don't get copyright on it. But I doubt anyone from CBS, Time Warner, whoever the fuck owns them now, is going to really watch a 30-minute video. But who knows? Maybe the AI overlords at YouTube will figure it out. So I don't know. Maybe I won't actually play it. I may just, I don't know. I guess maybe we will just play it. Anyway, I'm going to get some water real quick. Make sure you hydrate, guys. And we'll move on to that segment. Okay. All right. So, yeah, this video that's been circulating around, it's a 24-second clip from CBS Sports. This is, again, all credit to them. Again, hopefully I don't think I'll get copyright here, but you never know these folks, especially when we're dealing with some of these networks that have massive legal departments. But again, I think it's going to be okay for the most part. I don't think we're going to have any issues. But again, this is coming from CBS Sports Network. To be more specific, this is, I believe, their weekly show, and it's, I believe, who was it? It's Cardale Jones, who was on this little panel here. It's Cardale Jones, the former Ohio State quarterback. I think it's Aaron Taylor. I'm not sure who that actually is. I don't know who that is. And on the other side of the screen here, then you have, I believe, the host. Then you have Beanie Wells, the former Ohio State running back during, what was it, like 2007, 2008, with Jim Tressel. A player that a lot of folks forget existed, but yeah, he was a really good running back for them. So to set up this clip here, they're talking about coaches on the hot seat. This is, again, kind of out of the context, but I figured why not just go ahead and play it for you. So yeah, this is a clip that is out of context, but they're talking about coaches on the hot seat, and they're discussing, at least it gets brought up, Mike Norvell, and I believe it is Beanie Wells brings this up. And he brings up the fact that, hey, if Mike Norvell wins 10 games, even if he does win 10 games, he may still be fired. So I'll go ahead and play the clip for you guys, and we can react to it accordingly. So let me go ahead and get the clip set up, share the screen, and do all that jazz. So it's going to take a minute here just to log in. Again, I've used our setup here. It's kind of strange. We have two different ways we can do the show, and my computer here is where we're going to be broadcasting this clip. So let me go ahead and get this set up, and you guys can watch this clip. You haven't seen it yet. If you haven't seen it yet, here it is. I'll just go ahead and play it, and we'll go ahead and talk about my thoughts on this. All right, here we go.
Mike Norvell. I mean, that's the situation that we've been talking about the last couple of years. You go back and you look at 2023, they were 13-1, but when they got into that big game, they got slacked. Then you go back to 2024. They won 2 games off of a 13-win season. Last year, going 5-7. That is not the Florida State way. If he doesn't win big this season, I think he's out of there. I could see him getting fired if he wins 10 games. And I got to go Mike Norvell. I mean, that's the situation that we've been talking about the last couple of years. You go back and you look at 2023.
Okay. So I think you guys probably got the gist there. And I'm pretty sure you guys on, well, let me exit out this window here. You guys on Spotify probably couldn't hear that, but oh well, guess it kind of is what it is. But anyway, that's kind of what Beanie Wells was saying there. Look, if Mike Norvell, if he wins 10 games, he'll probably just get fired anyway, right? So that happened, and a lot of Florida State folks are kind of like, huh? What? 10 wins? Like, what do you mean? I understand the confusion here, but I think what Wells is trying to say here, and I think this, in the external sense, I can kind of see it, but I also do sympathize with you guys where it's just kind of like, what? Like, duh, yeah, if he wins 10 games, he'll be back begrudgingly next year. Even if he wins, I saw someone say, oh, if he goes 6-6, he'll be back. That one I'm not sure about, but anything above like 8 wins, 9 wins, he'll definitely be back. Norvell will on up on the athletic director. He maybe just gone anyway. Mike Alford. Now, how would this happen? So there's only 2 ways Norvell could get fired here, really and truly. At least the reasoning for now. The easiest one for him to get fired if they win 10 games or more and they actually have a good season, there's a scandal, right? Just say a unforeseen scandal that rocks the entire program, and obviously there has to be a fall guy. He has to go away. That's pretty simple. I don't think I have to discuss any more of that, okay? All right, are we good? We're good, okay? Okay. Now, the other reason why this would happen outside of scandal is just if the Florida State brass, right, and we talked about this last year about the idea that they were going to fire him last year. There were plans in place. They were putting together, or at least they were attempting to put together the money to get Norvell out of there and likely the athletic director, a full regime change, as it was being described by folks like Bud Elliott over on 247, who's also a Florida State alum, pretty connected there with FSU. So that was the rhetoric coming out of Tallahassee, that they had this plan in place. They were going to get all their ducks in a row in order to get Norvell fired, and along with Michael Alford probably, and they were going to do it. Okay, this was after the Stanford game, probably after the Pitt game too, when they lost to Pitt earlier that year as well. So that was in the cards. But then you started to hear, well, the buyout's kind of huge. We don't really want to go to next year with a new head coach. The schedule, particularly in terms of ACC standards, it's a lot harder than it typically would be. Again, ACC standards. The non-conference, you got to go to Bama. Do you really want to do that in a first-year head coach, especially in a non-con game? So they decided to, not to mention too, they didn't have enough money to get Norvell out, which is kind of strange. Part of me kind of feels like that's what they want you to hear, to kind of make you kind of go, oh, so they can't do it. But at the end, they can turn around and say, oh, that means we have to do it. So we have to raise up more money. So the way this would happen if he ends up just getting fired anyway is that there's just, again, so much built up anger and so much built up hate that even if he goes 10 wins, the sort of justification I could kind of see here as well, we could bring him back, but is this guaranteed to be sustainable? Like again, his recruiting, shit. Transfer portal record, iffy at best, right? So the total justification that Florida State could use is saying, look, he won 10 games, whatnot. That's good, but is it sustainable? Like really? Like we got lucky with what, Jayden Daniels, and what? How much better is recruiting going to get? Is it really? So that's my only rationale as to why they would do that. Just say, you know what? Again, he won 10 games, but given his history and given the trajectory where things are headed, we can't really say we really trust him. So there's really kind of, I guess there's two other ways he can do this. They can just all out fire him and pay the buyout, or he could just, Norvell could take another job or resign or something like that, or just cite different reasons for why. Simply for why. So yeah, I mean, generally, I kind of disagree with Beanie Whales on that, but I can kind of see the path here. I can kind of see the vision, if you will. But even that, it's a very, very tall order here to really, really justify why they would do this. Realistically, begrudgingly, Mike Norvell, if they win, even if they win 8 games, I think he's probably back begrudgingly. I think a lot of Florida State fans would not want him to come back regardless, but again, semantics, the fact that, he did get them to the ACC championship game and won it a couple years ago, so there's kind of a little of the runway still, kind of. But yeah, I mean, look, the likelihood of this even happening, them even getting the 10 wins, pretty small. But look, if that's scheduled, I agree with Bud Elliott on X. He posted something about this. Yeah, 10 wins, if that's scheduled, he more likely should be back. Again, begrudgingly, because again, a lot of Florida State fans, a lot of folks around the country kind of understand the idea that, yes, this is, a coach that's on borrowed time, but, he wins 10 games or, 8 games plus, kind of falls into the same category as like Neil Brown at West Virginia. The second to last year, we just give him another year of an extension, if you will. Kind of like Luke Fickell a little bit as well. I mean, look, if they go, again, with a very manageable, real reasonable schedule, you'll probably be back next year. So, yeah, some thoughts there on that Mike Norvell segment there from not 247, I guess kind of 247, but just CBS Sports Network there. Interesting clip there that's been floating around. Speaking of interesting, Big 10 projections, Big 10 predictions for this year, conference picks. Like we did with the ACC, we're going to do the top 3 teams. So the 2 teams that are in the conference title game, the team that was left out. And then we'll do the surprise team, the Big 10 title, and we'll pick the winner and whatnot. And so let me go ahead and get the graphic ready for you guys. And again, for folks on Spotify, you won't be able to see this, so I'll just read it out to you. I kind of get it. You guys can actually see any of the graphics and whatnot, but that's why YouTube exists. But I get it. A lot of folks prefer just to listen to stuff, so that's why we'll go ahead and read it off to you guys. All right. I think this is the one I want. Yep. Okay. Big 10 conference picks 2026. So the top 3 teams in the Big 10, at least in my opinion, at least the way I see it, is going to be Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. So that means Oregon, Ohio State. I have them both going to Indianapolis to play for the conference title game. I believe this will be the first time ever that this will be this combination, which makes sense, right? Because they've only been, at least Oregon's only been in the conference for so many years. They've been there before. They faced Penn State. This is the first time they're facing Ohio State. And this would also mean 2 years in a row. Or, I mean, two games in one season that they're facing Ohio State. Because they play them in November of this year. So No, that's pretty interesting. Now, grant you the team that's third here, that's left at Indiana. I know a lot of folks are going to see that and go, "Oh, really? Indiana being left out of the Big Ten title game?" Like I said before, when we brought this whole thing up last week, I still have a lot of faith in Coach Sick. He does. I mean, or at least I do. I mean, duh. I mean, he won the national title last year. He deserves all the accolades and how historical that was. But like I mentioned, you lose all that talent. You lose Fernando Mendoza. You have a brand new team coming in the transfer portal. It's not a guarantee that a team is going to do what they did last year. Again, like I mentioned on the show last Thursday, talking about Indiana this year, what they are and what they're not. They're not last year's team, but they're a team that, yes, they used the portal. We'll see how those pieces fit. There are some players that are still back, but not very many. And also, you have to face a lot more of a interesting schedule, right? You have to go to Ohio State. You have to go to Washington. You have to, I believe, play USC. So the schedule does get a little bit more of a, it goes more of a different direction than it did last year. Yes, you did go to Oregon to beat them, but I mean, outside of that and Penn State, probably, it was a workable schedule, all things considered, right? So even with this, even if Indiana is out of the Big Ten title game, they'll still be in the playoff. I think in this scenario they will be in. If those are the top three teams. Now the surprise team is Washington. Speaking of Washington, they'll be the team I am looking at here as a surprise team. There's a big caveat here. It really has to come down to DeMont Williams, and if that team's really bought into him, especially what happened at the end of last season and going into that whole thing of him, won't he go in the portal? There was all the LSU stuff about him really interested in going down there, and that whole thing coming out during that funeral for the volleyball player or for whoever that was. And, just the timing of that was very weird. And a lot of folks were kind of dogging on DeMont Williams and the way he handled that. And like I mentioned before, there's really two ways this can go with Washington. They can really buy in, and DeMont Williams is fully bought in, and they can surprise someone. Remember, they get it. They get both Indiana and who was it? Penn State. They get both of them at home this year. There's opportunities to be had. But then there's the other scenario to where this thing falls off the rails. The team's not totally together, and things can really fall apart very quickly for Jet Fish. I don't think that's going to happen. They could be the surprise team here. Doesn't mean they'll make it to the cultural playoff and be a 10-win team. Maybe. But, I mean, there's other teams, too, to consider in the Big Ten that could also be a playoff team, right? I mean, you have Ohio, at least in this scenario, you have Ohio State, you have Oregon, you have Indiana. Then there's sort of maybe that fourth spot. So is it Washington? Is it Penn State potentially? I don't know. So there's definitely a whole range of possibilities there for the surprise team. Again, you could easily put Penn State here. You could even probably put USC or like Iowa on there. But I decided to go with Washington. So the Big Ten title game here, again, Ohio State, Oregon. That's a huge game. Obviously, it's a huge game, but just from an historical perspective, right? Two of the best teams in the country, again, beating each other twice in a year. Grant you, yes, it's weird. You don't typically see that in college football. But again, now with no more divisions and the conferences expanding, the way they handle the conference standings and whatnot, this will happen. And it's probably going to happen more often than not. So this alone would be a killer Big Ten title game, in my opinion. This will be extremely entertaining. Now, based on the way these teams are lined up, by the way, for listening on Spotify, Ohio State's number 1, Oregon's number 2. So that means Ohio State beat Oregon. But in the Big Ten title game, as people always say, it's hard to beat a team twice. I'm picking Oregon to win this game if it were to happen. Again, two of the best rosters in the country, two of the best quarterbacks in the country, two of the best coaching staffs in the country. I'm assuming this will probably be a low-scoring affair. I'm not expecting this to be like a 55-51 type game. Probably closer to like 17-14, 24-20 type of ball game. Again, if Ohio State wins that first game in November in Columbus, again, like I just mentioned, the whole mantra of it's hard, it's really hard to beat teams twice. That applies here. And I think Oregon would probably win that game if I had to choose it today. Obviously, there's a long time between now and December, but that's the way I'm seeing it. So again, to wrap this up, the top 3 teams in the Big Ten, at least according to me, Oregon, Ohio State, 1, 2. 3 is Indiana, so Indiana's left out. The surprise team is Washington. the Big Ten title game is, again, Ohio State, Oregon. The winner will be Oregon and Dane Lanning. And that'll be their second Big Ten title that they will have won, which is crazy that everyone claims that, Dane Lanning can't win the big one. Well, he won it a couple of years ago, and he's, at least according to this result, he would have won it again. So what else do you want him to do? Go like 15-0 or 16-0 and beat every single team 100-0? God, this whole thing about ring culture is really. Anyway, so yeah, Big Ten picks there. Seems pretty. It seems kind of typical, but it kind of is what it is, I guess, when it comes to picking the Big Ten. At least right now, I think that's at least the way I'll do it. But who knows? There's still a long way from now in December. But again, as I see it today, I believe it is going to be an Oregon or an Ohio State-Oregon matchup there, and I do believe Oregon gets revenge on Ohio State and they beat them. Okay. Oh boy. So this next segment is not a segment I really wanted to do. At least I didn't think I'll be doing, but let alone here we are. So if you have not been following the news, if you haven't been following, ESPN or even on X, Twitter, you started to hear last night about this thing about Joe Burrow, or not Joe Burrow, but he's kind of tied in here. But this whole situation with Jayden Daniels, right? You're probably thinking to yourself here, well, Jayden Daniels, what does he have to do with college football now? He's in the NFL playing for the Washington Commanders, right? He's not relevant to college football anymore. Yeah, he won the Heisman, but why? Why is he relevant? Well, a news story came out yesterday from ESPN that talks about sort of what happened here with Jayden Daniels. Now, to give you some backstory here on what's happening. So, Jayden Daniels, of course, he wins the Heisman, and Brian Kelly's second year, they, of course, they didn't make it to the national title, and they make it to the playoff, which is, look, that is a shame, and I think that's, disappointing that, they wasted a pretty valuable player the year because the defense was was absolute garbage, right? Then, of course, they hire, as Josh Pate calls him, American hero, Blake Baker to come in, and defense magically gets fixed, and the offense goes the other direction. And of course, Brian BK's out of a job, and now they bring in Lane Kiffin. But anyway, so this whole thing started with LSU. So Jayden Daniels, his number 5 jersey, has not officially been retired. And you see this happen with certain teams over the years, right? Like, for example, Cam Newton in Auburn, Tim Tebow in Florida, for a long time now. And great, at least of Auburn, I believe Florida, it's not the case, but with Auburn, it is the case. The number 2 jersey has been retired. That happened last year. But for a while, especially with Auburn, the number 2 jersey was still technically available, but it was kind of like an unwritten rule where it's like technically you could wear it, but I think the thing was, or the vibe was like, it's like you could wear it, but we don't really want you to. The same thing in Florida, right? I believe, who was it? Anthony Richardson wore it. There when he was in college, there from 2019, 2020, 2021. So he wore it. So again, it's not, it's not uncommon for jerseys, at least initially, from high profile players not be, retired quickly. The exception to the rule here is, of course, obviously Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter at Colorado. So what ended up happening here is, because of all of that, the fact that the jerseys have not been retired, and again, it's only been a number of years, or 3 years, I believe. So his Jayden Daniels number 15 or number 5 jersey is still out there. So sophomore DJ Pickett, who I believe is a cornerback, I believe, if I recall correctly. So he wanted the number 5 jersey, and he was promised it when he, I believe, coming out of high school, I believe, or at least Lane promised it. So he wore it. So they handed it once, or at least they gave him that jersey once fall camp opened up. Despite the fact that Daniels was making it clear that he didn't want it reissued. At least that's what the reporting is. But I'll get you guys my thoughts here in a minute on this whole thing. But anyway, so there's this dispute going on. He doesn't want the jersey being given to someone else, insinuating that he wants it retired. But you notice they don't. The reporting doesn't really mention Daniels himself. It's really the Daniels family, and this kind of goes into kind of similar, if you will, to what happened with Nico Nico Ilamiava and the whole Tennessee thing, where it wasn't really Nico's decision. It was kind of the family representing him and whatnot. So, again, that's where this all started. Then you bring in, now it's, the double standard now. Joe Burrow had his Heisman number retired. So, why, or at least no one's worn it yet, but that's the key thing, hasn't worn it. Again, the same thing with Cam's jersey for Cam Newton's number 2 jersey. Same thing with Tim Tebow's jersey, right? It's not typically worn, or at least up until this point, at least of Auburn, it's not been retired, but even before that, it just wasn't worn. It was kind of an unwritten rule and whatnot. So that's the whole controversy. He doesn't, want his jersey there. At least that's what it was initially reported, right? Doesn't want his jersey be worn by anyone else. They want it retired. At least that's what his family wants, apparently. But range really doesn't matter. Like, who the fuck really cares? Whether it's Jayden or everyone's assuming it's his mom, which we'll circle back to in a minute because there is a bit of history here when it comes to that. But I want to bring up these posts here, and at least one of them. Now, I do agree with Bud Elliott, and actually, I'll probably just show his post on X last night. On X here, I'll read out both of these, because one of them is actually more like breaking news, I feel, that's kind of developed here within the last 30 minutes or so, and the other one's kind of from last night. Because I do kind of agree with Bud Elliott a little bit on his take on things, and he chimed on this. I don't believe he was on Cover 3 earlier. I believe he was not present for today's show, but I do agree with his post on his post on X. Now I'll go ahead and show it to you guys on YouTube and on Spotify. I'll read it off to you. So Bud quote tweets the post, or at least the article from ESPN, and he brings up an interesting point here. So, quote from Bud Elliott here, quote, Joe Burrow led a team to a ring and had one of the most historic seasons ever. Jayden Daniels is such a whiner. Get over yourself. End quote. I agree with Bud Elliott. I agree 100% here. I think this is just mind-boggling to me how this is all happening here, and the fact that, you're comparing yourself to Joe Burrow, who won a national title. And yes, I completely agree that the team you were on, at least defensively, was significantly worse. Defensively, right? That's just what it is, and I agree. But comparing yourself to Joe Burrow, Joe Cool, the Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick, who basically dragged your team to a national title, particularly with the defense. Yes, the offense is great and a ton of NFL talent there, especially at wide receiver. But let's be real, the defense is probably on par or maybe even worse than that Auburn team in 2010. But anyway, that's not the real tweet I wanted to really show you guys. I'll get back to my thoughts here in a minute with Jayden. But this tweet here from Matt Moscona, one of LSU's beat writers, kind of an interesting breaking news thing. So I'll go and just read it off to you guys here, and also on Spotify. Well, here on YouTube and on Spotify. So here's what Matt Moscona brings up: that LSU and Jayden Daniels saga takes another strange turn. Sources, according to him, or his sources, confirm that Daniels' camp wants LSU to return his copy, or to return, wants LSU to return its copy of the Heisman Trophy, something LSU has no intention of doing. Daniels contacted LSU leadership before fall camp. Lane Kiffin or at least Lane Kiffin has privately, I guess, spoken to Jayden Daniels personally. I guess they talked on the phone or something like that. So that's the breaking news here. So apparently now it's not only, they want they not only want the jersey retired, but now they want the Heisman Trophy returned. They also want the trophy returned, I guess, for some reason. But it's the school's copy. Like, it's not your copy, right? Like, why would they be returning their? That just doesn't make any sense. That's just kind of odd, in my opinion. So here's what I'll say. I 100% agree with Bud. Stop your fucking whining. Because here's what I want to remind you guys, if you don't remember. This isn't the first time you've seen issues of Jayden Daniels referring to his former school. Should I remind you that Jayden Daniels, remember, he started his career at Arizona State. He was, he was there with Herm Edwards, famously. What was it, in 2019? They beat the Justin Herbert Oregon team. Those, that was when Christian Kirk being there on ABC Saturday night. I remember watching that game vividly. Very entertaining. But anyway, he started his career at Arizona State. But remember, he left and went to LSU. But if I recall, there was that video circulating all over the place on Instagram, YouTube, X, of the Arizona State players trashing his locker when he left. I'm just going to say there's a reason why that happened. There is a reason why that happened. And no one can never figure out why that's the case. Is it because the players at Arizona State despise Jayden Daniels because he's as Bud Elliott says, he's a whiner, which I kind of agree here in this situation? Or is there something else? There's also something else, too, that I want to bring up. His mother, Regina Jackson, apparently, according to when I did some research earlier, I totally forgot about this. She has a history here of at least the family here, particularly the mom, who I think a lot of folks are assuming this is the one who is kind of escalating the situation. This isn't the first time she's done something very shady. Apparently, this is during the whole scandal with Herm Edwards, the recruiting stuff. She was apparently also involved in recruiting violations at Arizona State while her son was a player there. So this family has a history of doing some really messed up shit. And I'm just going to say to a lot of folks who are listening to this, while yes, it is probably true that this might be an issue with the parents here, particularly the mom, Regina Jackson, again, similar to the whole Nico situation with Tennessee. I'm just going to say here in this scenario, if what Matt Moscona is saying is true, that he also now want the fucking Heisman Trophy returned, that's fucked up. That is fucked up. You know what? If I'm Lane Kiffin, here's what I do if I'm Lane Kiffin. And that's, to all the folks who are saying, oh, Lane Kiffin hasn't changed. Here's a sign here if he's actually changed. If I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm telling Jayden Daniels and his camp this. If you're escalating, if you're willing to escalate this far, to go as to not only want your jersey retired, which you've only been out of college for a certain number of years, and you're comparing yourself to Joe Burrow, which is just outrageous. And yes, the fact is true. That year was wasted because of the defense. But the past is the past. There's no the freaking time stone from Doctor Strange doesn't exist. You can't go back in time and fix that. Okay, so that's understandable. But you're comparing yourself to Jayden Daniels. You want your fucking jersey retired, and on top of that, you want us, the Louisiana State University, to return our copy of the Heisman Trophy to you, as in you own that. Fuck that, and fuck you. Okay, that is bullshit. That is heinous. That is ridiculous. That is escalatory. And so you know what? If I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm so mad. There we go. That's how I feel about this. This again really did piss me off earlier, and seeing this earlier pissed me off. Not Matt Moscona. Matt's a great reporter and whatnot, but the idea that you're so heinous, so snake-like, to want not only your jersey retired, demanding that, but also demanding that you want your Heisman Trophy, the school's copy to be returned. I'm pretty sure I have it under good authority that you don't fucking own that. You know who owns it? The Heisman organization. So you want LSU to return that trophy to them? Like you're acting this, even that in itself is ridiculous. But again, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm telling them straight up, both Jayden and his family, particularly Jayden too. I think Jayden's mostly, he's obviously, guilty of this. It's his fucking family. Like you're telling me that everyone's saying, oh, of course it's his mom, Regina Jackson. She's the issue. It might be true, but it's his family. Like he's the player here. Like, couldn't he not stop this? Haven't heard zero from him publicly, officially, other than sources, right? So here's what I'm going to do. If Lane Kiffin has changed, if he is actually a changed man, contrary to what people think, if he is actually a changed man, if he is actually willing to grow a pair, if I'm him, if I'm the school, I basically give him the bird, tell him to fuck off, and say, you know what? If you're escalating, if you want us to return all that shit that you're claiming is yours, that you own, like you own the number 5 jersey, you own that Heisman, that's our fucking copy and not fucking yours, and your fucking $1 million mansion that's sitting in fucking Virginia, you know what I'm going to tell him? Fuck off and don't ever come back. If you want to escalate, we'll escalate with you. If you want to jump off the bridge, tell us how high. Don't come back. You are banned from the school. That's the LSU should say to him and his family. Don't ever come back. Think about come back on that campus or else you'll be trespassed. This is embarrassing. This is snake-like. This is criminal that you're acting this way to both him and his family. This is wrong. This should not be an issue at all whatsoever. And to even compare yourself to Joe Burrow, who deserves a statue, he won a national title, and also won the Heisman. Several things you didn't do. Yes, you won the Heisman, but you didn't win the national title. And look, I don't get this heated like this. I don't get this emotional. But when I hear stories like this, I do get pissed off. I do get mad. That again, this is snake-like. This is embarrassing to both Jayden and his family, and they're all comparable. Make no mistake, he deserves as much blame as his mom does. Apparently, and this is true. That his mom, much like she has in the past of having issues and getting involved in trouble, he's culpable too. He could have very easily stopped this, but he didn't, which tells me he supports this. He wants this to happen. So Jayden Daniels, fuck you. If I'm LSU, tell him fuck you and your family. Don't come back. Don't step on campus. If you do, you'll be trespassed. Just simple as that. So if you want to escalate, you want to continue making these maximalist demands and really ratchet it, the madman theory here, you can fuck off. You can never come back. You'll be banned from the school. So there you go. That's the way I'll handle it if I'm LSU. Again, I'm not an LSU fan. I'm getting riled up about this. And it should rile you up too, because this is the issue of college sports and NIL, the real dangers of it, and how ugly this can get for former players and stuff like that. Again, my anger here is not so much derailed specifically to the situation, but the way the sport's being handled, the way that there's no structure, and maybe if there were guardrails, maybe if there were certain things in place to prevent something as silly as this. Wanting your jersey retired because, you're mad someone's wearing it, and wanting your fucking Heisman returned, the school's copy that you don't fucking own, that the Heisman Trust owns, and it's theirs. Cry me a fucking river. Cry me a fucking river. So, yeah, if I'm Lane Kiffin, ban him from the school. Tell him to never come back. As long as he lives, or maybe not that. As long as he is willing to escalate and continue going up the whole escalation ladder, go up with him. You didn't start this, they did. So you know what? You can tell them, if they get mad and say, "Oh, how dare you ban us from campus or ever come back here?" Just tell them, you're the one who escalated this. You wanted this. You wanted this. You wanted this. So guess what? Do you want us to jump, or you want to jump? Tell us how high. You go low, we go high. So that's if I'm Lane Kiffin, if I'm LSU, if I'm Louisiana State University, tell them to fuck off, ban them. If they come back, if they show up to campus, trespass them. Simple as that. Simple as that. Because this is snake-like, this is criminal, this is embarrassing for not only Jayden Daniels and LSU, but also for the Commanders organization that they're allowing this to happen. I will just say this, and we'll move on. I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL steps up here or steps in. I don't think they will do it publicly, but I think behind the scenes, I'm sure that office is busy right now, because this is ugly for not only college football and for LSU and for the Daniels family. It's also ugly for the NFL too. And this is also, of course, happening during our preseason camp. So cool. Just watching the sport implode on itself like a dying star, apparently, or basically, maybe not literally, but yeah. Look, if I got really heated there, I am just the reason why I get heated for stories like this, whether it's the playoff expansion or things like that, or coaches doing stupid stuff and whatnot. It's because I care. I love college football. I love this sport, and to see stories like this really fucking bothers me. It really fucking bothers me. So again, if I'm LSU, ban him from the school. They'll never come back. And if they ask you why, just say, "Well, you're escalating. You're the one who escalated first, so we're going with you." So if you guys step on campus, you'll be trespassed. So anyway, going from a much lighter, harsher tone to now a more happier tone, if you will. Probably a strange way to end the show. Anyway, we've been going for almost an hour now, so we're done here, at least for live shows. So we'll be back next week. We'll be back on Tuesday. Hopefully I wasn't yelling that much here. I don't know, but yeah, I just got really amped up, if you will. But anyway, yeah, so we'll be back next week. We'll be back same time as usual, I think. Then we'll be back for the extra pod tomorrow. So until then, Have a great rest of your day. Rest of the end of your week. Enjoy the weather out there. It's hot and whatnot. So, is what it is. So until then, take care, and we'll see you guys on the next